You're listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm your host, William Cooper. Folks, if you've followed my broadcast for any length of time, you know that I've been bringing you news of the world without sponsorship. In part, I've been very leery of allowing just any corporation to buy time on my show, and we turned down an awful lot of people. I'm proud to announce a new alliance. Swiss America Trading Corporation and myself are committed to preparing my listening audience for the upcoming economic trauma. For over 11 years, Swiss America has been supplying over 10,000 clients with hard assets and constant information on how best to protect those assets. For a limited time, folks, interested listeners can receive a complimentary newsletter if you mention my name, William Cooper, and ask for the information on protecting your future. Call 1-800-289-2646. That's 1-800-289-2646. Call today and invest the time it takes to read one of the most important publications of our times. Call 1-800-289-2646. There's no obligation, folks. Nobody's going to knock on your door, and you get something free that's really worth reading. I promise you that. The siege continues in Waco, Texas. A small group of men and women trapped under siege by government forces in a church known as Branch Davidian stand upon principle, protecting their rights under the first article of the Constitution of the United States of America and the second article and amendment to that document. They are fighting the second battle of the Second American Revolution. Make no mistake about it, folks. We are at war, and you may be next. Gary Hunt, welcome back to the Hour of the Time. 2 weeks ago, we did a show together, and that I just reran that this Monday night on WNRO, or WRNO, which is it here? Let me see. Put radio station, WRNO. Sorry, folks, and I'm sorry, WRNO, but changing radio stations has got me a little bit confused, as well as the rest of you are trying to keep up and listen to this show. Your show was rerun on Monday night, and it's now Thursday night, and the last time we talked was just a little over 2 weeks ago. What's happened in Waco, Texas since then, Gary?
Well, very little has really happened. It's been a lot slower than it was at first. They have encircled the complex with concertina wire. I guess some of the speculation down here is if there are any convictions, if they're going to get credit for time served when they come out. They still don't acknowledge that they're under arrest, even though they are entrapped by the metal wire. There was an event the other day that caused a little excitement. That was when they were allowed to come out and light some incense outside. It was described initially as a smoke bomb, but it was some incense that was lit by Steve Snyder. So I spent a lot of time more recently trying to find out a little bit more about the Branch Davidian membership. I think you had Rita Riddle on last night, and I've been speaking with her quite a bit. She's a very interesting, very intelligent lady, as have all the people that I have been able to talk to that are members of the Branch Davidian Church.
Well, in my conversation with Rita Riddle, several things emerged, Gary, and maybe you can make a few comments on this. One, she didn't sound like she was crazy to me. She said that at no time was she or anyone else held hostage, that there was no child molestation, there was no promiscuity amongst any of the members of the church, including David Koresh. She stated that she never saw or knew of or heard of anyone practicing anything that could even be remotely construed as illegal activity during the whole time that she was with the church. And several other things that completely contradict what the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and the Federal Bureau of Investigation have been putting out at their news conference. She also stated that she's being held as a material witness, of course against her will, as a prisoner in a Salvation Army facility who is under contract and receiving funds from the federal government, which is another church functioning as a prison. And I found all these things eye-opening, shocking, revealing, totally contradicting what the government has put out. Can you comment on these things?
Well, the indications I have from the people in the church is they are practicing a religion as most people in this country do. It is very similar to the Seventh-day Adventist Church, which is a large organization that I've seen in virtually every city I've ever been or lived in. These people in the Branch Davidian sect might feel that the end times, as they call them, are coming a little sooner than the Seventh-day Adventists might, but then I recall from the early part of this century in the history books that the end of the world was coming and people should repent. So this is nothing new, and I'm sure it's occurred many times in the history of man.
It actually occurs several times each century with several different religious groups, some of which end up totally disappearing when they find out that the day the world was supposed to end, it doesn't end. Some of them go back and look in the scriptures and find a reinterpretation and continue going. But the point is, all this is harmless. I mean, they're not hurting anyone. And under our Constitution, they have a right to worship at the altar of their choice and believe whatever they want. And expecting the end times to be near certainly isn't breaking the law and hasn't hurt anyone else. Would you agree with that?
Well, I see no harm coming to anybody as a result of their actions or activities. In fact, one of the ladies I've met, Janet McBean, was in the Laverne, California home. She was a student in college out there, and she was also working and is very productive in society. A number of the people in the WACO church had jobs in the community and performed quite well in those jobs. They had good reputation with the people I've spoken with in the community that dealt with them. The only people in the community that seemed to have an objection to the Branch Davidians are those that did not know them before this incident occurred on February 28th.
Well, we find that all across the country. I was watching Jay Leno the other night, and he was making cracks about David Koresh stating that he's Jesus Christ, and talking to Rita last night and to many other people that I've talked to in the WACO area, many of whom do not care for Branch Davidian, do not believe in the things that the church believes in, but they have all stated unequivocally that David Koresh has never said that he's Jesus Christ. Have you ever found anyone that's ever admitted that they've ever heard David Koresh state that he's Jesus Christ?
Well, the only ones that I have heard admit that they have heard David Koresh say that he was Jesus Christ are the BATF and the FBI representatives at the press conference.
And they don't even...
People I've spoken to, the people in the complex that I've heard and the ones I have spoken to do feel that David Koresh is the Messiah, just like Catholics see the Pope as the person who speaks for God.
But has he ever stated that he's the Messiah?
Only if I believe the FBI and ATF, and I have a lot of trouble doing that.
and you know something,
what difference would it make if he did? It still wouldn't be hurting anyone. Why do they come out with these statements that are obviously false and try to make the man look like an utter, complete, crazy idiot when in fact he has not made these statements? And I've heard from Rita that while they said initially that David Koresh was the one that they were after, they're really after somebody else named Paul. Is that true?
Well, Paul Fata, they have accused of trying to get back in the complex. Now, here comes a very confusing story. Delroy Nash was arrested early in March. He was captured with a very dangerous weapon. It was a .22 caliber pistol made by Jennings. Mike Schroeder at the same time was killed, and another individual escaped and was later identified as Bob Kendrick, who has since been arrested and charged. I think the charge that he and Delroy Nash have against them is attempted murder of federal agents.
Because they tried to get into the compound, that's construed as attempted murder of federal agents?
That is the charge brought against them. Whether they ever fired a shot or not is unknown. Bob Kendrick had a weapon apparently, but it had never been discharged, and there's no reason to believe that the weapon that Delroy Nash had, now Delroy Nash is also Norman Allison, he's got an alias apparently, but there's no indication that his weapon was discharged. Now Mike Schroeder was the body that was found on the 5th 3 days later. Apparently they didn't realize they'd shot him when they captured Delroy Nash. But they had said that 3 people had attempted to enter the compound. In California, they indicated to a lady out there in an interview that they were after Paul Fata because he tried to gain entry to the compound at that same time. Well, Paul Fata was interviewed on Street Stories and was not in WACO or in this area at the time, and did not make any claims that he was here. Now, Paul Fata apparently does have a firearms license and was lawfully purchasing or selling weapons or MREs. In fact, apparently the Branch Davidians do buy large quantities of military meal-ready-to-eat cases and do sell them at gun shows quite frequently as a means of supporting the church.
Well, this is what Rita revealed last night, was that Paul was the one who has the federal firearms license and would attend gun shows and buy guns and MREs and many other things, and turn them around and go to another gun show and sell them at a profit. And of course, it made money for him and for the church. And but she said she didn't know of anyone else who was engaging in these activities. She said David Koresh was not. She said there was maybe 3 or 4 other of the men who would go to the gun shows with Paul. But there was no huge stockpile of weapons. There was no 50 caliber machine guns. There were none of these things, and that every single weapon that was owned by members of Branch Davidian were legal weapons and were legally purchased, and that the church itself owned no weapons whatsoever. Does this conform to what you've found out?
Yes, it does. In fact, from what I understand, Paul Fata was very meticulous in his record keeping, that when he came back to the complex, he would immediately record any purchases or sales of any weapons that he had transacted in his absence.
Well, that's required with someone who has a federal firearms license.
Yes.
And we would expect him to do that, and now you're telling us that that's exactly what he was doing, was conforming to the law.
That's my understanding, and I have yet to find any violations of the law on the part of the Branch Davidians, including the defense of their building.
So, Gary, what is this all about? Why are people dead, laying in the cold, cold ground, and 6 known dead adults still in that church who haven't had the benefit of a decent burial? What is this all about?
Well, let me correct one thing. 2 have been buried. One was Paul Schroeder. Of the 6 dead, 2 were killed outside the complex. One was Paul Schroeder, who was left on the fence. Now, remember, the FBI and ATF claimed that they were very discriminating in picking their targets, but for some reason they decided to leave Paul Schroeder on the fence for 3 days. Peter Gent He apparently has subsequently been buried by the federal forces. Peter Gent was on top of that large tower. Generally, you'll see it off to the left.
And he's the one that they brought down.
He was brought down. I'm not sure how he was brought down, but his body was left exposed for 7 days, and we found is clearly visible in some of the videos laying on top of the tower for that entire time. Now remember, these David Koresh negotiated a ceasefire so that the killing would stop and that the ATF could take out their dead and wounded. Apparently, I've heard that there was an understanding as well that the ATF would remove Peter Gent's body because it was outside of the complex proper on the water tower.
Mm-hmm.
They never removed it, and it was later done either by the Branch Davidians or by helicopter. I don't have a clear story on that yet. But the ATF and the FBI, the people who wanted humanity or humane treatment for their people, refused to offer the same in return for the Branch Davidians and allowed Peter Gent's body to remain exposed to the weather for 7 days. It was the body that we've seen buried to the side of the complex.
So then there's 4 inside that are dead that have not received a decent burial.
My understanding is there are 4 inside. Whether they have been buried inside or not, I do not know.
And these are adults.
I'm not sure. I have been led to believe that one of them is a child, a 2-year-old child that was killed, but there's no way to verify that. The FBI knows. They will not release the information.
Well, according to Rita, all 6 of the dead that have been admitted so far are adults, and she absolutely refused to tell me if any children had been killed. And this disturbed me a little bit, simply because I couldn't understand if children had been killed, this would do more to rally Americans behind them than anything else. But maybe she has a good reason for not disclosing that. I don't know, and I'm certainly not going to judge her for that. I know she has her reasons. But we have heard that David Koresh's daughter was killed, and that one other girl was killed. What do you know about that?
Well, there has been talk going around about a 6-year-old girl who was killed. I have no reason to believe that there's any truth to that at all. The people that have been spreading that claim that there is a video available, but they have not produced the video. They have also made claim that the Morse code message that came out had 7 short messages in it. However, we have yet to be able to determine if that's true, even though I've viewed portions of the video of the Morse code. In fact, I understand from people that were in the complex that it was just an experiment to see if the light could be seen, that no message was sent. We have no affidavit by somebody qualified to read that Morse code, so again, I think we have a rumor, as we did with the 6-year-old girl.
Well, it may be a rumor, but nobody can prove that the 6-year-old girl wasn't killed, can they?
Well, in speaking with people that were in the complex, they have not denied that perhaps one child was killed, but they have denied that more than one has been killed.
Okay, now, a lot of people are going to be very upset and confused about this. Can you tell us why they would refuse to acknowledge whether children were killed or not? I'd like to get this issue out of the way because I know a lot of people out there would be just disturbed as I would when if someone said that they could not tell us if there were children killed or not. And I understand that you may have knowledge of some reason why they may have done this.
Well, as far as the Branch Davidians that have come out not divulging who has been killed, they do not want the families to worry based on rumor. They had decided before they came out, I think it was probably David's instruction, that until the FBI will officially acknowledge it, that they should not speak of what happened inside that is not common knowledge. And common knowledge, again, would be Schroeder and Gent. Now, the FBI and the press conferences have taken the same position. They say that everything David says is a lie. I'm inclined not to believe that because I've found the press conferences fraught with lies by the FBI and the ATF.
Well, so far, the weight of truth tends to be on the side of David Koresh. Now, I don't know if David Koresh has told any lies or not. But one thing that we have definitely ascertained is that almost everything that the FBI and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms has told the public is a lie.
Well, we have a lot of situations, and if we take any one subject, we've heard 3 or 4 stories about it, or 2.
And they just changed another story.
One of them is bound to be true. We're just not sure which one the truth is.
Well, maybe none of them are the truth yet. Who knows? I was talking to my father today, who lives in Texas, and he told me that they just reversed their story on another point. I forget exactly what it was, but he said they just changed their story on the latest thing that they were telling.
Well, they did make a statement today, Monday, that I thought was interesting, and that was the only person this is Bob Ricks, the only person who's important to this whole scenario is David Koresh. If somebody had the magic formula, the magic words that would cause David Koresh to come out, certainly we would be seeking that. Now, David Koresh, you remember, on March 9th, asked me to come in to help find a peaceful solution. The FBI continues to ignore the fact that the only time that David Koresh has had an opportunity to get out directly to the public a message regarding seeking a peaceful solution was an invitation for me to come in the complex. The FBI acts like that doesn't exist, so there's one of the scenarios that we run into here.
Well, when they say that David Koresh is certainly the key to all of this, that is just an extension, and they have to stick to that story, because according to them, David Koresh is holding all of those people hostage, and they're not free to leave or come out unless he lets them go. So that has to be their position. Now, we know that that's a lie, because David Koresh couldn't possibly be holding those people hostage, because he couldn't possibly have gone without sleep for this amount of time.
I think we also know that from the people who have come out, because they've made it very clear to me.
That's correct.
They're not held hostage. In fact, some think that they made the wrong decision in leaving.
That's exactly what Rita said. She said that if she had known what she knows now, she would not have come out. And she said that at no time was she or anyone else ever held hostage. And the whole thing is ludicrous on the face of it, that the FBI and the BATF could still be trying to tell the world that these people are being held hostage by David Koresh, when we know that David Koresh has to sleep, and without somebody else to stand guard while he's sleeping, their whole story just falls to pieces, and there isn't anybody else.
It might have been necessary for them to justify bringing down their hostage negotiation team, which is a counter-terrorism team. There are no terrorists in the Vance Davidian complex, so they can blame the hostage situation. But as I see it, the only hostages are the 90-some people inside the complex being held hostage by federal authorities.
Well, I got news for you, Gary. Our information from Washington, D.C. is that the entire BATF crew that's there is an anti-terrorist assault team.
Well, that's probably true as well.
What is the situation with the local people there? Don't they understand that this is not helping WACO or the entire state of Texas?
Well, on the contrary, WACO a few weeks ago had a proclamation honoring the BATF for bringing all the money into town.
You're kidding.
Now, last Sunday...
The city of WACO... Wait a minute, say that again. I want everybody to hear that. I want everybody in the world that listens to this broadcast to hear what the wonderful, sterling, upright citizens of WACO, Texas did.
The citizens of WACO 2 or 3 weeks ago had a proclamation, had one day, and I'm not sure which day it was. I will try and get that information and get it to you on another program. But I did see the proclamation, and they were honoring the BATF for all the business they brought to town.
Let's wipe out a church. Let's kill a bunch of people so that WACO, Texas can have some more money in its bank accounts. Boy, that's wonderful.
Suppose we'll have many chambers of commerce setting up a new committee. Which church to wipe out to bring business to town?
My God. Welcome to the New World Order, folks. if this is any indication of what's to come, and if this is any indication of the attitude of the American people in a small American town, especially in the state of Texas, a small town, my God, most small towns are bastions of freedom and supporters of the Constitution. Why in the world is WACO different from most other small towns in that regard?
Well, I'm not so sure that it would be. I think that we're dealing with a situation similar to 220 years ago, where less than 5% of the people really care about what form of government we have. The rest are satisfied with their six-pack and their movie, and they're not aware, and they accept government as qualified to tell them how to live their lives. They're not the type of individual that made this country great and strong. They're the type of people that are complacent as long as they're given what they want in life.
In other words, what you're saying is basically the citizens of WACO aren't people, they're sheeple.
They're sheeple, and they're typical of what we would find as probably a majority in most cities in this country.
Well, that's...
Let me tell you one more situation that's occurred out here. Janet McBean, when she got out from California, we drove around.
Well, let's tell our listeners who she is first, because they have no idea what you're talking about.
Janet McBean was well, her brother is in the complex now, but she was subpoenaed by the ATF to come out and testify before the grand jury. She testified on Tuesday. We won't know the results of that testimony.
Is this a federal grand jury, Gary?
It's a federal grand jury.
Okay, go ahead.
We drove out towards the complex on Sunday, on Easter Sunday. There's an area that we've called Observation Hill. It is about 6 miles distant from the complex, but it's just up the hill on 340 loop from the Farm to Market Road, 2491, which is the primary checkpoint to the complex area. It is the one that the press goes into Satellite City. All the weekends prior to this, there have been a number of people up there that would be in the dozens, but there were virtually hundreds. There were actually dozens of different people selling T-shirts. Now, I noticed one predominant theme of the T-shirts, and that is that they are pro-BATF. Prior to that, there were anti-BATF or pro-David Koresh T-shirts. We didn't understand this, but virtually every person up there selling shirts was anti-David Koresh. It reminded me of the money changers story in the Bible, the money changers in the temple almost. As we left and went back towards Belmead, which is the town the BATF suited up in, off to the side of the road about a half a mile away was a small group of people selling T-shirts. We did not stop to see them, but they had a large sign up that said Rude Awakening. To me, that sounds like people that are selling pro-David Koresh T-shirts, and I speculate that they were not allowed to sell the T-shirts on the hill where everybody else goes.
Well, I see it another way. It's probably pro-freedom, pro-constitution, pro-rights, pro-everything this country was founded upon. I don't think anybody knows enough to be pro-Koresh or pro-BATF. I think this thing is being manipulated at the highest levels, and I think that there's a lot of complicity with the citizens and the local officials in Waco, Texas, and I think that people are basically either for law and order, and they're believing what the authorities tell them, and they really think that these people are a bunch of criminals that deserve to die, or they understand the real threat to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and they're trying to get that message out. I doubt if there's anybody that's really pro-BATF or pro-Koresh, because I doubt if anybody outside of the BATF or outside of Branch Davidian really understands and knows what's going on enough to be pro or con either one of those. I'm not against the BATF. What I'm against is what they're doing that's destroying the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And I know that you feel that way also.
Don't go away, folks. We've got to take a break. We'll be right back after this very short pause.
Where there is more controversy, yeah.
Well, it won't work, and if you're listening on this line, BATF or FBI or anybody else, it's not going to work. The truth's going to get out, and you're going to answer for your actions. I can guarantee it. And there's a lot of other patriots in this country who are going to make sure that everybody in the world, not just in America, finds out what the truth is.
Are we still recording?
Yeah, we're still recording, and but we've got to take a break now, Gary, and so just hang on, and we'll get right back to you. Don't go away, folks. We'll be right back after this very short pause. Well, we're back, folks. That didn't take long, and we are still talking to Gary Hunt in Waco, Texas. Before we were so rudely interrupted, Gary, you were trying to tell us something. Why don't you continue along those lines?
Well, in the long term, we've seen some changes in the administration of the control of the complex. Initially, it was a BATF operation. Almost immediately, the FBI came in as senior. And it wasn't until about 2 weeks ago that the Texas Rangers were identified as the investigators for the occurrence out here.
Hello, folks. This is William Cooper for Swiss America Trading. As you know, a fire has caused us to move. And when my friends at Swiss America Trading heard about the fire, they went right to work finding us another place to broadcast. Within a matter of hours, a new station was found, this station, thus making it possible for this program to continue to get the truth out to the world. The people at Swiss America Trading stand behind this program, and I want you to stand behind them. Swiss America Trading deals in protecting their clients through non-confiscatable, non-reportable hard assets. Now, you've heard me inform you about the trouble this country is in, both politically and financially. The time to act is now. Call the experts at Swiss America Trading at 1-800-289-2646. That's 1-800-289-2646, and have them show you how to protect yourself. Call 1-800-289-2646. That's 1-800-289-2646, and mention my name, William Cooper, for a free newsletter on protecting your future. By protecting your future, folks, you're keeping the future of this program and freedom for the world alive. Call today, 1-800-289-2646.
I'm not against the BATF. What I'm against is what they're doing that's destroying the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And I know that you feel that way also. And I know that many other patriots in this country feel that way. We're not against those men who are out there in the BATF who are taking orders from somebody else who's taking orders from somebody else. Because I think that a lot of them know by now that they've done the wrong thing, and they're kind of wishing that they hadn't done it, and they're probably trying to figure out a way to get out of it and still maintain some kind of self-respect and respect for the American people. But I don't think that's going to happen now, do you?
Well, it may be occurring slowly, and we've had, if we look at
ladies and gentlemen, the phone line has just been cut off to Waco, Texas. If you'll hold on, we're going to try to reconnect. You heard it right there. They shut us off, and this is not unusual when we're trying to do this kind of thing. Well, we've dialed the number. Gary's staying at the, here we go. Just hold on, folks. 223, please.
Gary Hunt.
Gary, we were
The WACO phone system.
cut off.
We joked that the alligator clip's coming off.
Yeah, well, this is not unusual. With my radio show, we talk to a lot of controversial people about a lot of controversial things, and this happens quite frequently. In fact, sometimes when I'm talking to somebody about sensitive subjects, it happens every time we connect. Every time we get onto a subject that's particularly sensitive, and we were just talking about the BATF and the FBI, and I'm sure because of your activities down there representing us, that they're probably tapping into your phone. Have you had any indication of that?
It wasn't nearly as it didn't occur the first week or so I was here, and then it began occurring. It got more and more frequent, and it does seem to occur more often in conversations where there is more controversy, yeah.
Well, it won't work, and if you're listening on this line, the ATF or FBI or anybody else, it's not going to work. The truth's going to get out, and you're going to answer for your actions. I can guarantee it. And there's a lot of other patriots in this country who are going to make sure that everybody in the world, not just in America, finds out what the truth is. Before we were so rudely interrupted, Gary, you were trying to tell us something. Why don't you continue along those lines?
Well, in the long term, we've seen some changes in the administration of the control of the complex. Initially, it was a BATF operation. Almost immediately, the FBI came in as senior. And it wasn't until about 2 weeks ago that the Texas Rangers were identified as the investigators for the occurrence out here. There was a lot of effort by a lot of patriots to bring to the attention of the public that it would be wrong to let the fox guard the chicken house, and so the Texas Rangers have been given the overall investigative responsibility on this. They did begin their investigation, and shortly after their investigation began, there was a little bit of a row between the FBI, the ATF, and the Texas Rangers. That resolved itself within a few days. The FBI has since begun distancing themselves from the ATF. First, in the press conferences, we saw that the ATF was being asked very few questions. They were jokingly thanking the press for throwing them a bone when they were asked a question. Later, they separated the press conference to FBI first and then ATF, so the ATF could get their more bones or more questions thrown their way. With that separation, something interesting occurred. The FBI was dealing primarily with current issues, and ATF was dealing with issues of the original assault. At that point, then, the press had a different mindset when the ATF came up on the podium and began asking more critical questions of the ATF regarding, for example, the 3 people that walked in the window. Did they die inside? What really happened there? Very pointed questions.
You mean the press is beginning to ask real questions now?
They were beginning to ask some real questions. And then all of a sudden, for some reason, David Troy came out last Friday or Saturday and said, "This is our last press conference." Now, here's the guy that was wanting to have more questions asked of him. All of a sudden, he gets flooded with questions and decides there's nothing more to say and discontinues the ATF portion of the press conference.
So the BATF is not now holding any more press conferences because the questions are just too hot for them to answer, or is it for some other reason?
Well, they're too hot to answer, and also I don't think that they have a very competent system. I don't think they can remember what their last lie was.
Well, we're finding that out, aren't we? I mean, if you just go back and review the tapes of the 6 o'clock news and the local news and read what's been printed in the newspaper, you'll see that everything that they said, they've ultimately reversed and come up with sometimes 2 or 3 stories in place of their original story.
Well, I'll point out that you're very limited in what you have access to.
That's true. That's why we have to rely upon people like you and whoever else we can get a hold of in Waco, Texas, that's right there that really knows what's happening.
Well, I we'll be obtaining a complete set of videos of all the press conferences, and what you generally, what I've been able to discern that you've been able to read out there in the press is limited to just certain questions where numerous questions are asked. But most often the most interesting questions are not reported by the normal press. But at any rate, it seems that the FBI is attempting to distance themselves from the ATF, and I think, quite frankly, their reason is justified, that they don't want to be accused of cover-up as truth begins to expose itself.
Gary, are you going to be able to get us a copy of those so that I can air the discrepancies and the contradictions as a show or a series of shows if it turns out to be that long?
Well, I'm not sure what the copyright laws are on those, but I will be glad to provide you a set.
Fantastic. We're not concerned about... Let me tell you something. On this show, we're concerned with one thing, the truth. And I'm willing to go to jail to get the truth out. In fact, I'm willing to die to get the truth out and save this nation. And I'm not worried about copyright whatsoever on breaking news. In fact, the law says that breaking news is exempt from copyright, so that settles that anyway.
Well, it would seem if the FBI is attempting to provide this information to the public, that it should be public domain as well.
Well, that's true. It is. Breaking news, hot news, is public domain for a certain period of time. After that, then the tapes and things belong to whoever made them. But at the time of breaking news is not protected by copyright, period.
I should be able to get those off to you within a couple of days.
Fantastic. Because we'll certainly air them, and we will air the dirty laundry in front of the world, I can guarantee you. By the way, Gary, just so our listening audience will know, who are you down there representing?
Well, I'm representing the Outpost of Freedom, which is my newspaper published in Florida. I'm representing the American Patriot Fax Network, which is about as new as my newspaper. Both of them began in early February, and because of WACO, have stepped into one of the hottest things going. The SCFN has provided us a means of communication that is absolutely new to the Patriot community. We've got overnight delivery of my press releases every day to thousands of people across the country, including Hillary and Bill Clinton, Sessions, Higgins, Lloyd Bentsen, and Richards, the governor of Texas, the Texas Rangers are receiving our faxes, and the ATF compound, or the headquarters here, is receiving them, as well as yourself and many of the media around the country and a lot of private individuals who disseminate the information, so we may be reaching tens of thousands. The newest person I represent, and I'm very proud to represent, is the Citizens Agency Joint Intelligence. It's the CAJI News Service, and also the Hour of the Time. That is your organization, and I feel honored to be affiliated with you.
Well, thank you, Gary. And of course, you have been fully accredited with press credentials from us. And also, I'd like to point out that the American Patriots Fax Network has made me an advisor to their organization. And of course, we get all the faxes, and we'll be using those on our program from here on out. There are a lot of people in this country who are doing a lot of things to help save this country, save the Constitution, and make people aware of what's happening. And, you know, a lot of people tell me when I travel around this country on my lectures and when I just meet people and they know who I am, they tell me, you know, I feel so helpless. There's nothing that I can do. I'm just one lonely person, and I don't have any power, and I don't have any money. But, Gary, you don't have any power, and you don't have any money, and I don't have any power, and I don't have any money, and I don't know anybody who's working in this that has gotten rich. Do you?
Well, there are a few that have gotten rich that profess to be patriots, but I think the indicator of a patriot nowadays, because we are so limited in our means, are those that are willing to put in their sweat, and their blood, and their tears into getting the message out to America and helping it grow. I've managed to stay here in Waco from contributions. I have a check on the wall here, $1, which was apparently all this lady could afford. But from what I've seen, the patriots that constantly circulate their money back into the movement are the ones that are helping pull these pieces together. Ken Barton, I think, is the best example that He's just put his heart and soul every night into getting out hundreds of faxes. But it's a love of country that is binding us. It's not a love of money.
That's true. It's a love of country. It's a love of freedom. It's an understanding of what's really happening. And what's really happening is we're fixing to go backward in the evolution of human society from the point where man finally, in all its striving throughout history, finally became free when this country was created and our Constitution and Bill of Rights were written and made the supreme law of the land, and we stood as sovereign kings in our own right with the government as our servant. Now we're ready to give all that up and go backwards and become slaves again, with the government owning us as the king used to own us, as the king always, wherever there's a king, owns his subjects.
Interestingly, and I'm sure you're aware of this, the United States Supreme Court, and I don't have the site in front of me, but I'm sure a lot of the patriots are familiar with it. The Supreme Court said that the United States is a metaphor, that there are three definitions. Two of those definitions were sovereign. The first one is the president as he faces the world to represent the 50 states. The second is the U.S. government, which is sovereign to Washington, D.C., the territories, and the ceded land. And the third one, which is not sovereign, is the 50 states united, because that sovereign lies with the individuals. We know, many of us know that third United States of America still exists in this country, but most people have voluntarily or involuntarily joined the second one, which is the sovereign U.S. government, which is a socialized government.
That's correct. It resides within the boundaries of the Federal District of Columbia, and the territories are property ceded and deeded to the United States of America, residing within the Federal District of Columbia, and not the states or the people.
That entity, the sovereign, resides with the government, is a voluntary action of the body politic, which takes away the rights that God gave us and gives us to government.
That's correct. Anyone who voluntarily puts themselves under the jurisdiction of the federal government residing within the boundaries of Washington, D.C. has no constitutional rights. And that is in the Constitution, plain and simple. And our forefathers gave us everything that we needed to succeed and everything we needed to fail, and it was up to us to know the difference and act responsibly and maintain our sovereignty in the face of human nature. And the clause in the Constitution that enables us to fail is, of course, the right to contract. And whenever the state gives us benefits and we accept those benefits, and by state I mean the state as defined as the Federal District of Columbia, the United States government residing within there, which Congress makes the laws for, when they give us benefits, we actually contract to be ruled and governed by them instead of being a sovereign citizen of our state. Does that make sense to you, Gary?
Yes, it does. We receive the benefits. We just don't realize the cost that we will pay for those benefits.
That's correct. And isn't it human nature to want to take the easy route, to want to have somebody else provide for you, give to you, ensure you a job, ensure your old age, take care of your medical benefits, instead of starting out and planning and being responsible for yourself?
Well, that was one of the fears that Thomas Jefferson had when the Constitution was created. In fact, in our history, it goes back even further. There were two early colonies that we're all aware of, Plymouth Colony and Jamestown. Both of those, when they arrived on the shores of this great nation, were socialized. After a few years, they began failing. They were near death in cases. The effort, being communal in nature, wasn't sufficient to motivate the people to produce as well as they could. And in both cases, when they converted from socialized common ownership to free ownership or free man status, and each owned and reaped the rewards of his efforts, then both of those colonies succeeded and became the foundation of the concept that our Constitution was built on later. Now you have to remember that this is the only country in the world that is founded on a basis of rights coming from God.
That's correct.
There we have something very common to David Koresh and the Branch Davidians. the right to practice our religion and to recognize that the rights come from God. And as we lose those rights, we become socialized like every other country in the world where men are put above God and are able to decide and rule and dictate our lifestyles.
Well, according to those who want to bring about the New World Order, those who belong to the secret societies and really have infiltrated in all levels of our society, government and military, they believe that there is no God, there is no Satan, there is only the working of man's mind. They believe in the Luciferian philosophy that man was held prisoner in the Garden of Eden, and he was set free by the gift of intellect from Lucifer through his agent Satan, and that by the use of this intellect, man himself will become God. It's the religion of humanism, and that's what we're seeing being brought about. And of course, the biggest enemy in their eyes to their religion is Christianity, is Orthodox Judaism, is the Islamic religion, and they have vowed to destroy those and to establish a religion that works in the best interest of mankind and changes with the needs of man instead of conforming to a moral law handed to man from God, and that man literally is the arbiter of his own fate, and because of that is at the mercy of the law of the jungle and has no rights given by God or anyone else. Whoever has the most power has the right to rule. Does this sound like something that conforms to what you've discovered?
Well, yes, but I go a little further. I think they recognize that there are two classes of men, them and us.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The illumined man is the one that will rule, and the illumined man, of course, is the elite of the secret religion of the practice of Mystery Babylon, which is the worship of the mind.
So I think we can equate it more to an anthill, and the majority of the people are the ants that go out and are trodden upon by other people, and the hierarchy is those that stay in the anthill and are served by the others.
Absolutely correct.
Have you ever spoken with Tommy Buckley about Treasury Gate Bill?
No, I haven't, and I've refrained from that because of the Cosmos fiasco. We investigated that, and basically they were saying the same thing, and we found out that they were a bunch of, just flat a bunch of liars. So we're staying away from Treasury Gate so we can more thoroughly investigate the people involved and investigate the whole thing. It's my belief that if these people really had what they say they had, and I'm not judging them at all because our investigation is not finished, it has been the experience of our research that anyone who has posed a serious threat to the ruling elite have been summarily executed within a very short period of time, and these people have not been touched except you might say as a token, maybe to get us to believe them. I don't know, but we're investigating. We're finding out. But go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, Tommy is going to try and come down here to WACO next week. He is concerned for his safety. He has a bunch of bodyguards, but the federal lawsuit that he filed, the answer is due on Friday of this week.
That's correct.
And hopefully after that, this may open up if it is legitimate. Now, what I've reviewed of it, it appears to be, but as you said, we really don't know because there's been a lot of rumor and error associated with it.
That's correct.
If it is true, it indicates, it points directly to an elite that controls hundreds of trillions of dollars worth of gold. And at this point, I'm inclined to believe that that hierarchy, that group inside of the anthill being served by the rest of us does exist.
Oh, absolutely they exist. There's no doubt about it. In fact, we've proven it on this show. I've done 18 hours of broadcasting revealing their history, who they are, how they came about, how they were able to control the wealth of the world, and just exactly what their plans are for the future. It's no mystery to the listeners of this radio show, I can assure you. It's the explanation why Americans look around. They see this country dissolving right in front of their eyes. They see things happening they never thought could ever happen in this country. And WACO is one of the best examples. And they can't find an enemy, and it's because the enemy is their father. Sometimes it's their brother. Sometimes it's their mother or their aunt or their uncle or their grandfather or their grandmother or their sister. They're all around us, and they belong to secret societies, which really collectively are one political movement, and they have slowly and surely infiltrated every element of our society, our military and our government, and they're in complete control right now. And the only thing that can save this country, and in fact freedom for the world, and that's what this broadcast is all about, is for the sheeple to wake up. People are always asking me, how can I protect my assets? And my answer is this: if the only thing that you care about is your assets, you're going to lose your ass, because you'll never be able to protect your assets unless you can save the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, which are the only things that ever allowed you to ever have any assets in the first place.
Well, I've found people willing to share their assets to keep the effort we've got going down here in Waco going.
Me too, and we've had
more and more people are realizing, excuse me, what you just said, that their assets mean nothing unless we have the freedom to enjoy those, just like Plymouth and Jamestown.
That's correct. Gary, if people wanted to, well, let's back up just a little further. You have a home, don't you?
Somewhere.
Where do you live, Norm?
From Florida.
And you have a home there, right?
Yes.
And do you work?
I am a land surveyor.
Okay, and how long have you been in Waco, Texas?
Since March 6th.
Since March 6th, and that's 38 days, and you haven't been home, is that correct?
I have not been home.
And you haven't been working, is that correct?
I have not. I've tried to keep my office going by phone. I've lost a few clients as a result of my being here. I hope that I can recover them if and when I get back from Waco.
Well, the reason I'm asking you this is I want Americans who are more concerned about their job than they are about this country. I want them to hang their head in shame when they hear this. They know what I've lost and what I've given up in order to do what I'm doing. They've heard what other people who have appeared on this show have lost and what they've had to give up in order to do what they're doing, all to try to save this country, so that a whole bunch of assholes out there who care more about their job than they do about the country can have some assets to be concerned about. And I want you to give an address where people can send donations to help you stay down there and to help you stay afloat while you try to get at the truth, try to bring some kind of a peaceful resolution so that there's no more loss of life, so that you can represent CAGI with the press credentials that you have, and can appear on more of these shows and inform the people not only of this country but of the world. Give us an address, Gary, where people can send donations and who they should make those donations out to.
Okay, donations. Checks are, we don't have a bank account here. When I say I've got some local people that have been helping me. So checks are almost impossible to cash, but postal money orders made out to Gary Hunt, we can cash, or left blank, whichever you prefer, and cash donations we receive. They can be mailed to Davidian, D-A-V-I-D-I-A-N, Fund, 1201 Lake Air, A-I-R, Drive, number C114, Waco, Texas, 76710.
Well, you heard it here, folks, and nowhere else. As you know, a fire has caused us to move from WWCR to WRNO. And when our friends at Swiss America Trading heard about the fire, they went right to work finding us another place to broadcast. Within a matter of hours, a new station was found, thus making it possible for this program to continue to get the truth out to the world. The people at Swiss America Trading stand behind this program, folks, and I want you to stand behind them. Swiss America Trading deals in protecting their clients through non-confiscatable, non-reportable hard assets. You've heard me inform you about the trouble this country is in, both politically and financially. The time to act is now. Call the experts at Swiss America Trading at 1-800-289-2646 and have them show you how to protect yourself. Mention my name, folks, William Cooper, for a free newsletter on protecting your future. By protecting your future, you're keeping the future of this program and freedom for the world alive. Call today, 1-800-289-2646. Good night, and God bless each and every single one of you.